That's about it. Hello, this is Moscow's Administrative Committee meeting, Monday, January 13th. Ann Zabala and Maureen Laughlin here with me on the committee. So the first thing we have up for the agenda is the selection of committee chair and vice chair. Any volunteers, nominations?
I nominate you as, one of you guys are going to be the chair and one of you be the vice chair, so I don't really care.
I'll be the chair if you want.
Great.
Okay.
Ann, thanks.
And I'll be the vice chair.
I actually think maybe Maureen should be the vice chair. It was a good learning experience first time around. How do you feel about that, Maureen?
I'm on it.
Great.
Okay, there you go. Okay, we've done that. You're on.
Okay. So for the second item on our agenda today, approval of the November 25th, 2019 Admin Committee meeting minutes. I was not here, but I thought they looked good.
I was here and they're good.
Great.
I was not here, and they're fine.
Okay, so moving on to item number 3 on the agenda, Ordinance Amending Title 6, Chapters 2, 3, and 4 of the Moscow City Code regarding mobile home and recreational vehicle parks.
And then you introduce Bill.
Oh, and here is Bill Belknap.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I'm here filling in for Mike, who was skiing this weekend. We'll be back tomorrow. But this is a project the Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on over the course of about the last year. To provide a little bit of background, this really kind of began back in August of 2018, where the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed and approved a request to designate a portion of the Abiel Mobile Home Park to accommodate RVs in that mobile home park. A lot of, or I should say many of our older manufactured home parks were really designed around smaller mobile homes that were more prominent at the time that they were developed, and have many spaces are a little bit small for current manufactured homes. And so the owner was looking to try to allow for some RV use within their individual mobile home park. Shortly after that approval, then in the fall of that year, November of 2018, the owner of that mobile home park requested that the Planning and Zoning Commission consider removing the 6-month limitation for occupancy of recreational vehicles. So under the city code currently, a RV can only stay within a mobile home park for no more than 6 months in any 12-month period. And at that point in time, the owner had received requests, and we had also fielded some questions. We had a faculty member from WSU coming over with their tiny home that was on wheels, and we would classify as an RV and could be in an RV park, but they wanted to have a place to have their tiny home be placed for the duration of the school year that they were teaching. And that 6-month limitation would get in the way. Oftentimes, we also receive inquiries from individuals maybe working on construction projects or building projects in the area that may have a longer duration than 6 months, and they oftentimes have a recreational vehicle they use to stay while they're working on the project. And so we've had a few instances where we've had some inquiries that for a desired use of recreational vehicles that exceeded that 6-month limitation. The Planning and Zoning Commission then discussed that topic in January and February of 2019 and directed staff to prepare an amendment to remove that current 6-month limitation. And in conjunction with that, they also started to take a look at the overall mobile home, manufactured home standards that exist in the city code. Those are actually addressed. We had 2 chapters that addressed mobile home parks as they were currently titled. One was for those that were developed prior to, I think it was 1980, and then those were for new developed mobile home parks within the city. Really, the 2 chapters were somewhat confusing and had somewhat conflicting standards, and the commission also wanted to look at kind of more recent housing trends of tiny homes and modular homes that might also fit in manufacturing housing parks and provide that opportunity to maybe better utilize some of those older and smaller scale mobile home parks in the city. And so they began a review of those chapters as well. So we had our new mobile home park and our existing mobile home park chapter. Both of those really hadn't been updated since the 80s. And there have been a number of changes both on state definitions and federal definitions regarding manufacturers' home and mobile homes and recreational vehicles that the commission worked through to update and develop the draft that's before you today. So the draft ordinance would then merge the new and existing mobile home parks to have just a single chapter in Title VI. It would address the manufactured homes. And then Chapter 3, so these would be the two chapters. So we had Chapter 2 that was mobile home parks, and Chapter 3 was construction and maintenance of mobile home parks to address, again, that new development. And Chapter 3 addressed the maintenance of the pre-existing mobile home parks. Throughout this draft section, mobile home, the definition of a mobile home manufactured home actually has some significance in state law. Mobile homes really are manufactured homes that were built prior to June of 1976. There were some very distinct building code standards that were implemented at that point in time, and so underneath state law, a mobile home was manufactured before that date, or 1970. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up. Yeah, June 15th of 1976. Both are HUD certified structures, but in 1976, new, more stringent standards for the construction and manufactured housing were implemented. And so underneath state law, a mobile home was constructed, again, before June 15th of 1976, and any units constructed after that are considered to be manufactured housing. Any existing mobile homes that were manufactured prior to 1976, if they're going to be moved, have to go through a rehabilitation to make sure they have minimum egress. A lot of times those earlier units had aluminum wiring that caused some challenges, so many times they have to be completely rewired in order to be reinstalled in a new location. So those definitions have been updated in this draft. And we've also included the definitions of modular homes, which are, again, homes that are built off-site but aren't underneath a HUD certification or a HUD factory. Modular housing is under construction and supervision of the State of Idaho Division of Building Safety. So they go through a certification process for modular home builders. So we included that definition as well as manufactured home park, and updated those in the draft. The draft addresses preliminary and final plans. We updated that with digital submission requirements, so those plans can be reviewed in a digital format like we do with all new development today. We eliminated some detailed internal review processes that we had streamlined since that time, and eliminated some of that confusing language about items being forwarded to the council. A final approval would be Planning and Zoning Commission. That's a similar fashion as RV parks. Right now, new manufactured home parks would have to go through P&Z for recommendations and council for final approval. So that final approval would reside within Planning and Zoning Commission, provided that it was an allowed use in that zoning district. The commission also looked at updating standards, again, just kind of reorganizing information for the manufacturing parks, including new or expanded, merged sections that were standards that address recreational area, buffer area, streets and roads, private streets, just really with the intent of trying to clarify the standards. Those were also reorganized sections that were also standards in there, including walkways, lighting, parking, utilities, refuse handling, and space number and skirting of units. And then introduced the allowance of modular homes, which have been inspected and approved by the Idaho Division of Building Safety, could be permitted and allowed within manufactured home parks. And many of the examples of tiny homes the commission reviewed would be considered to be modular homes if they're built out off-site by a tiny home manufacturer or builder underneath a modular home license from the state of Idaho. That would open the door to allow potential conversion of existing mobile home parks to accommodate tiny homes and modular housing. Previously, only HUD-certified manufactured or mobile homes were permissible underneath the draft code. As we look to the RV park chapter, again, there has been kind of a new edition of RV park models, which are a little bit different than your traditional RV, but they are still considered to be recreational vehicles underneath HUD standards. The state definition, so that was included in there. If a tiny house was on chassis and wheels, that would fall underneath that definition of an RV park model. So again, if we had that situation of somebody who had a tiny home on a chassis and wheels, that they could utilize that in an RV park rather than just the standard RV that was in the definition previously. Also updated, again, the electronic submission, the preliminary and final plans, and then the commission is recommending elimination of that length of stay limitation for RVs that have full hookups. They're fully self-contained. So this was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They held a public hearing on this as well and recommended approval to the City Council. This has been scheduled now for a hearing before the council at the January 21st meeting. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do. One, RVs, under these definitions, include the tiny homes that are still on chassis, but that also includes things like the traditional Winnebago.
It does.
It does it. So does this open the possibilities of having tiny home, Winnebago, tiny home lined up in a particular?
In an RV park? Yes. Both of those, a traditional RV, whether it's a travel trailer, a fifth wheel, or a motorhome, or a tiny home, which is essentially, a travel trailer, that is made of different materials, would all be permissible in an RV park.
In the building code, I think we had worked on the tiny home definitions and things like that. I think somewhere in there, didn't we say that permanently affixed to a foundation?
So that was
Is there a conflict?
No. Underneath, a tiny home built on a chassis and wheels would not be covered by the building code because it is a motor vehicle. It is licensed as a motor vehicle just like RVs are. So the building code does not address recreational vehicles. If you're going to build a tiny home on a permanent foundation or on a property, or you're going to block it on a foundation, then that would be covered by the building code. But as long as it's on chassis and wheels and is licensed as a motor vehicle, it is not covered underneath the building code. What the city did is we adopted an appendix that allows for different building standards if you are building a tiny home on a foundation. So it allowed for the egress out of a skylight or the ship's ladder for access to the sleeping loft. So it provided some greater leniency in building standards to accommodate tiny home construction. But that is if you're building a tiny home on a property on a foundation. If somebody has one that they've previously built, it's on a trailer, it's licensed as a motor vehicle, we would treat that as an RV, and it's not subject to building code regulations.
So would it be up to the owners and operators of RV parks to determine how long they intend to let people stay in? I'm thinking about things
Correct.
like the fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds has its own limitations underneath the special use permit that has in place. And they have their 14-day, stay limitation that they impose there. It would be up to the owners of the individual RV parks then to decide how they wanted to manage the duration of stay.
I find myself broadly in favor of it just because it encourages flexibility in smaller housing that people might want to take advantage of.
I think the commission felt this was maybe opening the door to allow for repurposing of some of the older mobile home parks with some different housing options, and certainly those that may be considered to be more affordable as well.
I like that the person who brought this to us, if they're receiving requests from it, allows them to be flexible as the person who owns the park, which I think makes sense if they want to let people stay there for longer than 6 months. So I think it's a good clarification too, overall. Anything from you, Maureen?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regular agenda.
This will be scheduled for a
Yeah.
public hearing, so yeah, it'll be before the council.
Thank you
Okay, thank
very
you.
much.
And one small note, if we could go back to item 1, we'll need an
Yes.
official motion on that chair and vice chair action.
I move nomination of Ann to be chairman and Maureen to be vice chair.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There you go.
And that brings us to our last item, which is a report, the Moscow Arts Commission and Arts Department Strategic Planning Report. Is Megan here with us today?
I don't see her.
Okay.
So, run out and grab her. So also, just by way of mention, we have breakfast on Wednesday.
Thanks, Brandy, yeah. You're faster than
So,
me now.
regional breakfast, Wednesday, 7 o'clock, Best Western, right?
We do, yes, and it's on Moscow's perspective of regional law enforcement in our area. So we'll have Chief Fry will be sharing an update on our bond proposal and the Quad Cities Task Force. That includes our facility that will be moving forward here in the near future. Oh, no. Oh, no. Your update on the strategic plan. Shall we table? We can table.
We're happy to table that item too.
Yeah.
I can talk about the strategic plan.
We can table it until the next committee meeting.
I didn't realize it was on
Oh, our apologies. I thought we had it all scheduled out for today, which is, we can definitely postpone it for the next administrative committee meeting.
This is my deer in the headlights look.
We saw it coming in the door.
Oh, did you? Okay, well, Zach was back in the room, he's like, you're up, and I'm like, shut up, no, no.
So sorry. That, we'll work together on that and we'll get it squared away for the next admin committee meeting. So my apologies. Yeah.
We table
Sorry
that
about that. Yeah. Yeah,
right.
we'll work it out. Thank you.
I'll be ready next
Thanks,
time.
Megan. Then that is it for today.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to make a motion to
I
adjourn.
always like to move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
No.
Aye. And this meeting concludes, do I need to say the time, Jen?
Kaylee will usually pick it up. for us,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're
Thank
done.
you. Yeah.